Hello, my name is Zachariah with Old Man Gaming. Welcome to another Snap Judgment review. What is a Snap Judgment review if you've never listened? Well, I think reviewers take a little bit too much stock in completing or near completing a game before they do the review. I want to give you an idea whether you're going to enjoy it right away or not. With that being said, I do about 5 to 10 hours with a game. I'm trying to give you an idea if you will like it the minute you jump in. And that, coupled with the fact that I think games are one of the most subjective forms of art, I don't give scores to my review. Instead, I'll give you an overview of the game. I'll tell you the pros and the cons of the game in my point of view, as all reviews are. And then I'll be telling you whether I personally will be sticking with this game or DLC outside the purposes of this review. This review has another little extra disclaimer on it because I already did a Snap Judgment review for this game. I did it some time ago when this game entered, well, I don't know if it entered early access, but it was in early access and I purchased it. I am redoing it because I did that review and it has hit its 1.0. It is now its full release. It has gone to market. And yeah, I put another few hours in and I wanted to give you guys my feelings on it now that it's all, it's all ready. I'm hoping there's more planned updates, but this is the final product, I guess. All right, so with that said, I'm going to do a quick overview since I would urge you to go back and check out my original Snap Judgment review. But this game is a game where it procedurally generates for anime kids. And it's kind of living that Super Sentai kind of fantasy of like, the four anime characters, one robot sort of thing. It's set in this weird kind of neo-kid punk post-apocalyptic world where machine robot mecha things have kind of taken over the surface, and the last remaining people fly around in airships and live in floating cities, just trying to scrounge away and fight the machines they can when they can. Your procedurally generated anime characters are referred to as fools because it's kind of like a suicide mission to go down there. And that's it. You do missions for it. They have added a story mode, which we'll talk about, and other things. But you can also create characters to be added in. There is a character creator in this, which we're going to talk about. That's the game. Well, that's not the game. That's not the most important part of the game. I'm sorry, guys. I'm a little off today. But the most important part of the game is the combat and the way it does combat, because there's nothing quite like it. So it is strategic turn-based in a way. What happens is you will enter a battle, and then you have this planning phase. All the actions take place on this little bar at the bottom, and you take turns with your opponents placing actions that you want to do. The actions, each character within the mecha has one action, and they also have a series of actions available to them dependent on the spots you put them in, such as the driver of the mech can melee guard or move from point A to point B, or maybe physically melee attack, whereas the gunner shoots weapons. Your electronics and your engineers do more internal things, such as manage the heat of the mech, drop some bombs, or scan for enemy weaknesses or what their actions are. And then once that planning phase is resolved, it plays out in real time with incredibly well done hand animated scenes superimposing your specific characters in those scenes. And the best way to describe this is what you're seeing on the screen at some point. I'm sure I've got some footage playing of my characters going through such things. And that's it. There is a tough learning curve to this because as far as turn-based fights go, there's really nothing like this that I have ever personally seen. There's 4 quadrants that you can move to. You can only melee attack or get melee attacked in the quadrant that you are. All of your enemies are different and weird, and while you can tell whether their action is movement-based or attack-based or special-based, which is something else, you can't actually tell what those actions are going to be unless you take an action with your electronics person to scan. And that's not always the best because the electronics also deploys healing gel and smokes to defend from melee attacks and all sorts of things. It's like It's like if rock, scissors, paper was on crack cocaine. That's the best way to define it. And the other thing is, and I don't want you thinking like rock, scissors, because rock, scissors, paper is big with a lot of turn-based, strategy games. Monster Hunter Stories does a lot with the rock, scissors, paper. I don't necessarily think those games are bad, but this is so much more than that. And just figuring out what blocks what and how it blocks itself is its own kind of thing to this. I never got so scared in this game as when I was going on a mission and I saw the icon of a bad guy that I'd never faced before. Not necessarily because I couldn't take that bad guy, but because I didn't know what this bad guy did, and that immediately causes a lot of heart palpitations with this. And why does it? Because your characters can die and they can be dead permanently. They will be gone from that specific playthrough. If it's a created character, it saves it to a database. You can always use them later in something else, but overall they're dead in the confines of that playthrough. The story itself is very interesting so far. I will say it was a little slow to get started. It felt very fetch questy at the beginning, but it really kicks off when a rival like mecha group shows up that you have to start competing with. I think it really added some depth there, because before that it was just go here, do this thing, come back, go here, do this thing, come back, which we'll talk about a little bit in the cons. I think that's one of the biggest potential negatives to this game. But yeah, that's the game. You'll fly around in this airship looking like going to cities, collecting missions, collecting gear and stuff, and fighting bad guys. One nice thing is you will never run into any random encounters on the map, so you will always get the chance to prepare. This does not mean you will win. The game's difficulty is relatively high, especially since your lack of knowledge is a real thing here, and you can tell that the developers want you to feel it. In addition to all this, your characters can interact with each other. They can become friends. They can become rivals. There's a lot of activities on the ship that you start unlocked with. Each one affects their fatigue, their morale, and their general disposition towards one another. There's also some random events that can happen. Most of these random events boil down to just like your friendship with somebody goes up or down, your fatigue goes up or down, something along those lines. What's interesting about that friendship relationship is if they are rivals, they can actually steal actions from other rivals if you pair them together. And if they are friends, you can actually tag in somebody else to give them an extra action. This is huge in the confines of the battle, because like if you want to move twice in a battle, your pilot needs to act twice. The only way to do that is to have them be best friends or worst enemies with another pilot. And that creates very interesting moments in the game that I think is really cool. It also puts kind of like a strategic kind of reason to have these characters interact and get them used to each other. And of course, in addition to that, the characters themselves will slowly level up. They will gain abilities and traits that help them during combat, help them during their overall missions and whatnot, which is very cool. They'll also get aspirations, though the aspirations boil down to just like go to a city or go do some missions for a city. But those aspirations allow the character to have another skill trait. Although I gotta say, at this early phase, that doesn't really matter that much, because they all start with at least like 3 or 4, and you only get a skill trait once you level up one of the things that you do, and it takes a long time to do that, even when you're reading a book that helps you build those skills. They really want to pad stuff out with kind of a grind to this game, that I don't necessarily think is bad, but at the same time, it's there, and you feel it. Alright, so let's get into the pros and cons this time around. My pro remains the same as what it is. The biggest pro is this game is one of a kind. There is no turn-based battle system that I have ever played that is like this. I have played quite a few. I'm not saying they're not out there, but this is just one of the most interesting, cool things. The music goes with it really cool. The actual moments go really cool. And just like there's so many intangibles to it too. One thing I didn't talk about is if your characters stay high, on their morale. They will actually get these instinct guards every once in a while. When you're about to get hit, they'll just automatically go into a super block. They can also limit break if they instinct guard so many times in a match, which means they can act twice. And these things, they don't even really tell you about these things in the game. They're just things that eventually you find, and it's really cool when your character does that. It gives you that anime moment, especially it being unique to you and your own character. Is just a really sweet, awesome feeling. I mean, and the animated scenes. The scenes are amazingly well animated. I was worried when it was like it pieces the anime together around you. And you will see a lot of the same scenes over and over again. I'm not saying you won't. But the fact that they kind of move together so seamlessly, they also have alternate camera shots for each one, which makes them feel fresh every so often. It's very, very cool how this goes. This is one of those games where you owe it to yourself, if you are interested in turn-based or mecha combat or anime in any way, just to try this game, just to play the combat in it once, because it's just the most unique, interesting thing. One of the most unique and interesting things in gaming I've played, I think possibly ever, definitely this year. So moving on, one of my big cons last review was the character creator was really confusing. It was hard for me to figure out what I was doing. The options seemed kind of askew, and when I changed one option, it changed another. I do want to say, as far as I am concerned, they completely rebuilt the character creator, and it's way better. I played with it a little bit just to make sure, because it was a con from last time, so I made sure to like play with the character for a little bit and see what I could come up with. And I actually really like it. It's much easier to understand what I'm doing and what I'm adding, what I'm not adding. Very, very, very cool addition to it. My next pro is the story, and this was almost not a pro, so much so that it wasn't even written on my little cheat here. The reason it is going to end up being a pro is because of the fact that it does start to really get interesting, especially when your other rival team shows up. One of the things that I do want to warn anybody about is the first couple initial hours, especially if you do the tutorial, are very grindy. They're very like, go here, collect a mission, go do that mission, which is a fight, come back and do it. And the bad guy types stay very samey in those first few hours, and I was very worried that was going to be the thing, to the point where I was really hemming and hawing as whether I was going to do the review, because I don't like to do negative reviews. The minute that other rival team showed up, the mission that it was in was great. It was really well put together. They showed up, and then everything got so much more interesting. Way more enemy types started showing up. There's all these other mechs to collect, other things to collect, more activities to be done. What's really interesting is the story kind of doesn't take your safety into effect, to the point where it sends you to places where you will get killed if you go on the mission, but they want you to be there, and you have to think about whether I should be doing this mission or not, and avoiding that mission. I think that's a really cool thing, to kind of send you into those areas and make you make the decision as to whether you want to risk something or not. It definitely got way more interesting from that point on, and it definitely gets way more interesting once your characters start to get into serious conditions, because after you play this for a couple of minutes, you definitely feel like you've got it locked down. You feel like the difficulty is not an issue. And then when you start to get into those other enemy types and stuff, things start to change. One thing I really found that's interesting about this game is it's very easy to keep the mecha alive. It's not so easy to keep your pilots from mentally breaking or getting wounded or dying. Significant damage to the mech has significant damage on the pilots. Period. So you can have half your health left in a mech and have one of your characters be gravely wounded and potentially on the verge of death. Or another person whose morale is broken because they've been hit so many times. I think that is really interesting, because the levels of difficulty are so, like, any hit is a bad hit. Having health is great, but if you are getting hit, it is bad news, period. And I love that about this. It really heightens those stakes and makes it very interesting. Every encounter, even when it's the same bad guys, after that point feels very different. It doesn't in the beginning. So like I said, first 3 hours, I would say, you're in for a little bit of a grind, and you're going to start to, the novelty of that battle system is going to wear off, and you're going to feel like you haven't mastered. And then the first time you run into like way too many bad guys, and bad guys you've never seen before that are doing weird things like setting your mech on fire or gluing you to a spot, things get very different. The first time I fought my first Medusa was like a whole nother level of crazy. So now let's get into the cons. Let's talk about some of the negatives of the game. One of the things that I really want to talk about, my biggest complaint, is the locked mecha. So there are 3 different mechs you can actually have your characters pilot in this game. There is the monkey, which you start with, the ocelot, and the patriot. I want to play the other 2 mechs. Those other 2 mechs have parts. I would assume they're relatively balanced. And one of the update things was you will be able to select your mech at starting, but you can't actually select the mech unless you have unlocked them at some point in one of your games. And that's the only way to start with the mech. I don't love this. I really don't like this. I think it would have been much cooler to... And this is a small team, so take it with a grain of salt. They could do what they could do. But I think it would be much cooler to have you starting, whatever your starting mech is where you start in the world, and that's the tutorial, what the tutorial is based off of. I think that would be much more interesting. I think it would be a lot more interesting to just be able to start in one of those mechs and then maybe unlock the other mechs inside. I hate the fact that I have to do, that I really have to level up this mech that I don't necessarily want to be in to even try the other mech. I want to be able to just play the other mechs from the start. I hate that they're locked. I just hate it. I can't get over it. This might be a preference thing, might not upset you guys, and that's fair, but I don't like the fact that the only real way to play those mechs from start to finish is multiple playthroughs. I would much rather be able to just like, not to mention the fact the amount of work you have to put into the monkey to even unlock the ocelot, which is what I understand as the easier mech to unlock, is huge. Like my monkey, like I will have invested so much into it. Why would I want to switch mechs? And that's something that kind of irritates me about it. I'd just rather start in a different mech. And then finally, my last thing is battle confusion. One thing I don't like, well, this isn't that I don't like this part, but there's a part that doesn't like about it. When you lock a character in to whatever their action is on the time tree, it's locked. You can't take that decision back, which I'm okay with that. I like the idea of you've made that decision, that character's made that decision. You can't just go back and redo your entire thing 4 different times to see how it would have played out. I want it to be locked so that it's like you're committed to this. This is what you've done. And it gives you that feeling of one thing that like tactical games don't give you, which is that feeling of like in the moment decisions that you have to live with and figure out how to get around. What I don't like is when you go back to the actual section and you know what the thing is, it doesn't tell you enough information. So like a good example of this is if you fire a missile in this game, you target a character. That character will be, the missile will hit like 3 rounds later. So you want to try and make sure that you're not in the same space as that character when the missiles hit, because the missiles will hit you too, because they're explosive. But if you go back into the status section and you're fighting 2 enemies of the same type and you targeted one of those enemies, it won't tell you which enemy you targeted. I hate that. Please tell me which enemy I targeted. Not necessarily, because I would know that. That's information I would know. I would know I targeted the one in the east quadrant, not the one in the south quadrant. Like, I would know which one I targeted, and all it does is just have an icon of that specific mech type. It doesn't tell you which one you targeted. There's a couple of things like that where like there's some confusion about reviewing what you've already done, and I don't like that. Especially when it comes to information you would know right off the bat. And then that's it. Whether or not I'm going to stick with it, I'm definitely going to stick with it. I have a couple of games coming out, trying to do some reviews. I'm trying to get some content out there, so I have to take a break from it for a little bit, but I'm definitely going back to it. I really enjoy this game. I really love what they've updated to it, and I hope they keep adding to it, because I am going to be doing a what does it need video on this game, and I think there's some room for really cool features here. I hope this is the foundation, not the end goal for them, because this game could be something truly special if they keep adding cool features to it. Did I get it right? Did I get it wrong? You guys can let me know in the comments below. You can influence this and all of our shows from there. As long as you guys keep watching and listening, I'll keep making them. See you guys next time.